Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea is in the midst of its longest monsoon season on record. Some 3,000 people are still not able to return to their flood-damaged homes, and there's rain in the forecast for another 5 days. The OECD raises its forecast for South Korea's economic growth this year to minus 0.8%. That's the best of any other country in the OECD, thanks to South Korea's containment of COVID-19. And South Korea's exports so far this month are down around 24% from a year ago. How that figure pans out for the rest of the month will be a key measure of the country's economic recovery. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea is continuing to see torrential downpours, and the damage is mounting, especially in Seoul and the surrounding areas. It's already the country's longest monsoon on record, and there are several more days of rain yet to come. Ji-young reports.
Heavy rainfall is continuing to fall over South Korea, especially in the capital and the surrounding regions. According to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters, as of 6 a.m. on Tuesday, at least 31 people have died since the start of August, 11 are still unaccounted for, and 8 are injured. This does not include the 4 deaths and 2 people still missing after a private rubber boat and a patrol boat capsized on Thursday as they attempted to rescue crew on a police boat at a dam in Gangwon-do province. More than 7,500 people across the country have been affected by the torrential rain, mostly suffering property damage, and more than 3,000 of them are unable to stay in their homes. Also, more than 8,800 have been temporarily evacuated, although some of these people have now returned home. More than 20,000 facilities have been damaged, mainly due to flooding and landslides, and about 50% have had emergency repairs. With the damage mounting up, the National Weather Agency says Seoul, Gyeonggi-do Province, and parts of Gangwon-do Province are forecast to get more rain until August 16th. South Korea is seeing a record-long monsoon front this year. The monsoon front first reached the capital region around June 24th, and the rain has lasted for 49 days as of Tuesday, and it is expected to break the 50-day mark. This has broken the longest record of 49 days set in 2013. The monsoon season is also projected to end at a later date this year than ever before recorded, as heavy rain is forecast until August 16th. That is later than the 1987 monsoon season, which lasted until August 10th. South Korea is expected to get up to 150 millimeters of rain on Tuesday in parts of Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheong-do provinces. Ji-young, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in is calling on officials to do their utmost to prevent further loss of life and property damage from South Korea's record-breaking monsoon rains. Speaking in a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Moon told officials to consider all possible financial support measures to achieve a speedy recovery.
피해 복구의 핵심은 속도입니다. 피해 상황을 신속히 파악하고 예비비와 재난재해기금 등 가용 자원을 총동원하여 충분한 재정 지원을 강구해 주기 바랍니다.
The ruling parties also suggested addressing the damage by drawing up another supplementary budget, which would be the 4th one this year. President Moon noted that there could be yet more damage if there's more rain, given the weakened ground and high water levels at dams and streams. He also highlighted the need to swiftly digitalize infrastructure so the country can better respond to such situations in the future. Until the monsoon is over, the president said the government must not lower its guard and needs to keep working under an emergency system. In North Korea, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies has trained some 43,000 local volunteers to help their communities recover from the flood damage. The IFRC is the only international organization that can enter all areas of North Korea. It says the North Korean volunteers have been working to evacuate people and have delivered household and sanitary goods to more than 2,800 families. They're also providing psychological assistance. Meanwhile, the North has also strengthened its weather-related broadcasting. From this month, the North's Korean Central Television has been broadcasting weather forecasts day and night, with officials from its weather agency appearing on TV to explain the situation and to let people know how to prepare. The U.S. biotech company Gilead Sciences has applied for full approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for the drug Remdesivir as a COVID-19 treatment. Gilead also said on Monday that in the American market, it's going to sell the drug under the brand name Veklury. Remdesivir has been used to shorten the recovery time of severely ill COVID-19 patients after it was granted a temporary authorization by the FDA in May. The drug's already been approved for use in the EU, Australia, and Japan. The South Korean and U.S. militaries are scheduled to carry out their annual joint summertime exercise from August 16th to the 28th. Multiple South Korean military sources say the allies began 4 days of crisis management staff training on Tuesday, preliminary training for the computer-simulated command post exercise. This year's exercise has been scaled down due to the COVID-19 outbreak. The simulations are aimed at improving the joint defense posture of the two countries. The exercises will help improve South Korea's readiness for the future transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. The OECD has raised its forecast for South Korea's economic growth this year to minus 0.8%. That's an improvement from its previous forecast in June of minus 1.2%. That would give South Korea the smallest decline in growth among the OECD's 37 member countries. And in fact, South Korea is the only country this month for whom the OECD has revised its forecast upwards. The figure is based on a scenario where it's not hit by a second wave of COVID-19. If there is a second wave, then the economy would shrink by 2%. The OECD said South Korea is the country that's most successfully stopped the spread of the virus without going into lockdown. Fitch Ratings has lowered its 2020 growth forecast for the North Korean economy by 2.5 percentage points to minus 8.5%. In February, Fitch had forecast growth of 3.7%, but revised that down to minus 6% in May because of the pandemic. Voice of America, which accessed the report, said Fitch took into consideration the continued international sanctions on the regime, growing global uncertainties, and an economic slump in China, the North's largest trading partner. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
A lot of uncertainty among investors on Wall Street right now because of the pandemic and the holdup on the stimulus bill in Washington. Overnight, the Nasdaq took a breather, but the Dow and the S&P were both up for a 7th straight session. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. markets were kind of mixed. If you look at Dow Jones, it was up 1.3%, while the S&P gained about 0.3%. In the contrast, the Nasdaq lost about 0.4%. This type of movements were actually happening since last Friday, where the Nasdaq was taking some breather for the last 2 days. And some of the people are saying that maybe there is a switch in terms of the net buying for sectors, where they're selling the major big tech companies while buying some of the cyclicals that are positioned in the Dow index as well as S&P 500. Clearly, that is because of the possible economic recoveries that might be happening. If you look at the change in the dollar index trend, we saw some of the movement where the dollars were strengthening. Also, the 10-year government bond rates were rising from falling to the lowest of 0.5% level to now about 0.59%. So clearly, there might be some changes in terms of the sentiment and the movement in terms of the sectors, in terms of the rising trend. All that depends on how quickly the economic recovery will happen. Donald Trump signed executive orders aiming extending the COVID-19 aid, such as extending unemployment benefits and deferring the student loan payments. But in terms of whether they really passing the Congress, it might take some time. So clearly there's issues whether the economic recovery will happen in full scales going into the fourth quarter this year or not, or whether it might be taking some slower pace. In terms of, however, the market movement, it seems that people are assuming that the economic recovery is happening and that equity market in general are showing quite strong rising trend so far.
Well, Korean stocks had another big gain today. The Kospi now well over the 2,400 mark, 6 sessions in a row in the green. What do you make of the market right now?
Right. If you look at the Kospi, it was up 1.35%, hitting above 2,400 territories, while the Kosdaq is taking some breather continuously in the last 2 days. It is at around 860, falling by about 0.3%. Clearly, the same type of movement is happening for Korean market as it happened to U.S., where the Korea's biggest, strongest movement sector was the Kosdaq, where Kosdaq index was the one of the strongest or the highest level of rise from its bottom since the COVID-19 incident amongst all the countries in the world. And because of that, it is taking some breathers. And while doing that, you see the Kospi rising quite rapidly, showing a quite significant rise today as well as yesterday. In terms of the valuation-wise, we think that the Kosdaq seems to be a bit stretching in terms of the valuation, while the Kospi looks quite attractive still, despite the strong movement that we saw last 2 days. We are seeing some of the movements where the COVID-19 beneficiary sectors such as on tech businesses or the bio businesses, those sectors were taking some breathers, while the automobile sector as well as petrochemicals or the renewable energy sectors were showing very strong movement in terms of share price. Also, some of the banking stocks are doing quite well due to the high dividend yield. So we are seeing some switching as well in Korea. Most of that movement is based on valuation, and we think that if that valuation is meaningful thing, then Kospi has some more room to go up based on our residual income model. Fair price of the Kospi is around 2,600 level, whereas the Kosdaq's fair value is about 890 level. So we are seeing much bigger room for Kospi to move going into the future.
Well, now, Mr. Yu, with so much uncertainty out there right now, gold is reaching new highs, a dip in the past couple of days, but still solidly above $2,000 an ounce. What's your outlook for gold?
Yes, really, when we look at gold, what we look at is the M1 growth rate of U.S. If you are seeing heavy amount of money printing and huge amount of the liquidity injection and M1 growth rate and M4 growth rate, we think that affects the gold prices to move up higher, because the value of currency goes down while the gold value goes up. Clearly, right now, we are seeing continuation of a huge increase in the M1 growth rate. We see that number hitting around 38% YOY, which is record highest level that we've never seen in the past. So because of that, we think that the gold price will continue to show rising trend. However, as you said, because of such a strong movement that we saw in the last 1 month or so, reaching well above $2,000 level, we are seeing some correction right now. As of now, the gold is fallen below 2,000 level. However, because of continuation of liquidity condition, we think that this is a good opportunity for investor to buy gold with some correction that we've seen last 2 days. We think that the gold's probably peak price will be much higher than $2,500 to ounce in the future, because in the past, the M1 growth rate affects quite significantly to the price of gold, and such current level of huge injection of liquidity, we think that there has more room for gold to go up in the future.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for sharing your insights today. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you very much.
And so far this month, South Korea's exports are down almost 24% compared to the same period last year. That's according to the Korea Customs Service, which says in the first 10 days of August, exports came to $8.7 billion US. There was one fewer working day compared to last year, though, so the daily average so far in August represents an on-year decrease of 12.7%. For the last 2 months, exports seem to be recovering. They were down around 11% in June and then 7% in July. As for imports, they're down 24% so far in August to $10.6 billion. The South Korean government posted the biggest budget deficit in its history in the first half of this year, a combination of spending to stop COVID-19 and a drop in tax revenue. According to the finance ministry, the government's gross revenue came to about $191 billion in the period between January and June, a drop on year of around $16.9 billion. Government spending soared by around $26.5 billion to more than $266 billion. The increase was largely because of the government's disaster relief payouts. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.